Thomas here with Much Props, going to give you another how-to video. As a lot of you know, I am a teacher by day. I teach junior high kids technology applications, and I also teach art. And I kind of get inspired from different things from time to time when I'm building. It just so happened that art class had inspired me one day. I was looking at some stuff from the Renaissance and really kind of got into some of Leonardo's work.
Really? You think I'm...
Leonardo da Vinci, you stupid turtle.
Yeah, that one. And I also have been on a trip to Italy a while back. A couple years ago, me and my wife went on vacation, and in Florence, we stopped at a museum that had some of Leonardo da Vinci's inventions kind of built up as an example. Like some of them were smaller scale models. And one of them that I found fascinating was his tank. And I thought, why not make a miniature version of that out of foam? So today we are going to build a Leonardo da Vinci tank out of EVA. Let's get to building. I found a 3D model on a program called Sketchfab that I use from time to time as a reference and drew up these templates that you see here for the basic shapes. If you decide to make this build, make sure to read the cover page. It explains the colors and the markings on the pieces of my template. I trace my parts onto some 6mm and 10mm EVA and then cut it out. Using the registration marks on my template, I drew on my panel lines. Now using a flat head on my wood burner, I use the metal ruler as a guide and burn in the lines, making several passes. I tape the bottom onto the main body to hit both of them at the same time. You'll notice there is a large gap every 2 lines. I'm adding a raised piece to look like a metal beam here, so there's no need to burn a line there. Wear a respirator and work in a well-ventilated area while doing so because you don't want to breathe in the fumes of burning foam. So that I don't have to paint on all the wood grain texture later, I decided to score in some lines now to do it for me. Push slightly onto the foam with your blade and make some lines across each panel. Once done, hit it with a heat gun and the lines will open up, revealing your magical pattern. Then all we have to do is push paint down into those channels later to make it resemble wood. I went ahead and did this to all my base parts. The model that I looked at had these nice little metal trim pieces across the edges to act as like reinforcement to the structure. I'm doing this with some 2mm foam. I cut the bottom out in a circle pattern to make it easier and carefully try not to let it touch any of the parts I don't want to accidentally too soon. The rest of my metal details will just be cut out of long strips of the same 2mm foam. The wheel assembly was a little tedious. I glue in a spacer to help keep the wheel centered in the hole in the bottom. It has these little pegs that stick out of the wheel, similar to like the gears on a clock, that allow the men on the inside to propel the tank forward or backwards. I cut up some 5mm dowels, slightly less thick than my spacer, and glue them into place with the help of some tweezers. You could go all out and make the parts accurate on the inside as well, but I decided just to make the wheels functional, so I burned a channel into the bottom platform on the inside, then ran a wire through my wheels to act as an axle. With the leftover pieces from the wheel well cutouts, I locked it into place on the top. The axles can spin freely without coming out of the channel. The cannons have a little frame detail around each of the ports, so I cut out some squares, measured 1/2 inch off the edge, and centered them into the panels by eye. Time to start assembling the main body. I coat all the edges with contact cement, wait a few minutes, and begin to tack parts together. The bottom skirt gets attached to the wheel assembly with the bigger end up. Then the larger wood panel section is added on top of it, followed by topping it off with one of the top spacers. Push all the edges firmly together. Then I went in and sanded back the skirt and large wood panel section where they meet so that I could come in and make a faux metal strap later in more of that 2mm EVA. The coned roof is next. Same basic steps as before with the contact cement on all the edges. The small end gets capped off with the part labeled top, and the larger end is capped off with another one of those top spacers. I cut some small pieces of foam to create a little lookout port on the top and super glue it down to the rest of the build. Then more strips of 2mm foam to make the metal support banding. My 22 cannons, yes, 22, were made from cutting a 1-inch segment off a 8mm EVA dowel, supergluing a small strip of 2mm foam close to the edge, and then burning in the barrel with my wood burner. Then I made a hole in the cannon frame on the body and superglued it into place. Last, I glued the door detail on. That is why there's only 22 cannons and not 24 on this model, and one section of the middle beam is left off. Glue it into place, then add some metal banding across the top and bottom. Two coats of Plasti Dip. Then I hit it all with a nice shade of brown spray paint. Using some black Platifex acrylic paint, I push it into all the wood grain cracks to make it stand out. Wipe away all the high points with a paper towel and you get the desired effect. I also went ahead and painted all the edges that will be metal with the same black paint. This took me quite a while. To give more variations to my wood, I brushed on random areas with lighter brown and off-white Platifex acrylic paint, hit all the metal pieces with a little silver, and painted a little fleur-de-lis on the door like what was in my 3D model. I left the cannons black to kind of make it look like they were cast iron. And we are finished. Here is the end result. Obviously, this is not exactly how the sketches are in his notebook, but this is what the model that I used as a reference in Sketchfab looked like. And I kind of went with it. I liked some of the added things on it, like the steel beams and stuff. So I just kind of ran with the design of the 3D model I was using. But overall, I think it turned out pretty awesome. It is templated for you and down in the description below for free. Maybe you will try and make one of these and impress your friends with your Renaissance capabilities of coming up with crazy inventions that people think that you're crazy, and later on they're like, oh, he was ahead of his time. Maybe you'll get some...
Yay!
And inevitably, they're going to ask you, how'd you make that? You can give one of these. Tell them, much props. Nope, doesn't quite spin, but see if you can catch it. Thanks to the continued support of my patrons on Patreon. Links in the description below. Check it out and consider joining these awesome people to help me continue to make content here on YouTube.